Blackhawks fans, welcome to another edition of the Four Feathers podcast. It's been about a week. We've got 3 games to talk about. We've got some roster moves as well. And of course, the trade chatter is more active than ever. And we'll get into that just a little bit later. But until then, I am GM Ron Ronlus. I'm joined by the boss man, Mr. Tony Marchese. Tone, Hawks go 1-1-1. Before we get into all things hockey, though, my friend, how are you doing on this Monday evening?
It's cold out there. It was a cold weekend.
Cold.
We're doing all right. Crack 'em. Cheers to you. Hopefully you're staying warm over there, sir. Yeah, doing all right. It was a good weekend of sports, Ron.
It was a good weekend of sports. There was a lot going on. Our Bulls on Tap crew, they got had a hell of a Saturday. The Derrick Rose jersey retirement.
I believe you made your way to the UC for that, did you not?
I did make my way to the UC for that. A very worthy shout out to a close. I'm going to call him a friend. I would consider him a friend. Mr. Jose Garcia was a gentleman and hooked up Katie and I to attend that game, which I know Katie was stoked. For those that don't know, my wife is a huge Bulls fan. So the way I am about Blackhawks, she is about Bulls. So it was cool to be able to go and take that in person. And yeah, Tone, we had a lot of good hockey as well this weekend. I think really outside of one period, this wasn't a bad weekend for the Blackhawks in terms of growth and in terms of just a young team getting healthy too as well. And we can talk a little bit about that as the show moves on. We'll be seeing Teuvo Teravainen returning to the lineup after missing, I believe it's 6 games. Andrei Burakovsky is going to be playing in the bottom 6 because of how healthy the Hawks are finally. So I think that just speaks volumes to kind of where the state of the roster is and obviously the roster move today, which we're going to talk ad nauseum about. But Tone, I do want to talk a little bit about each of these games because I think each of these games, as weird as this is going to sound, they were all important, I think, in the storyline of development for the Blackhawks this season. And I think starting with Thursday, because you go into a hostile environment. Carolina's a hard building to play in. They're a good hockey team. They're always good at home. And you come out and they went toe for toe, literally, right? Oliver Morris throwing fists. This team metaphorically is throwing haymakers back and forth with the Hurricanes. One team scores, the other team scores right away. It was a deadlock duel, literally all the way to the end. Hawks dominate overtime, at least in terms of time of possession. And then, of course, in the shootout, Oliver Moore, happy 21st birthday, kiddo. That's a pretty cool way to end it. Not quite an official Gordie Howe hat trick, but I think for sake of the birthday gift, I think we can give him the Gordie Howe hat trick for that one, Tony.
I agree. Great game for him. Unfortunately, I missed most of this game because of some technical issues on the Hulu side, which were not pleasant to deal with. So I didn't get to see the first 2 periods, but I did finally, the stream started working in the third. And that was pretty much all you needed to see, right, Ryan? Was the third period in the overtime and the shootout. I like the way that they played from what I saw. Obviously happy for Oliver Moore for all the reasons that you just pointed out. Mm-hmm. And that's a good team to beat. And one of the parting things I took away from that game, and the ESPN Plus broadcasts are horrible. But as they were sort of leaving out of there, I believe they went back to the studio in the post game and they were talking about how games like this can help spring a team forward and define a season. Now, obviously, we know what happened in the next 2 games, but there we go. You know, it's a win over one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, a good momentum builder for a back-to-back that they played this weekend. And I thought their play carried over. And I think that's important to note, that energy sort of carries over into the game against Tampa Bay, Ron. Any other takeaways that you have from Friday's game?
You know, I'll add some numbers to your point, Tony, because I think that's a great point. It's very rare that a team that's kind of in what we'll call a transition season for the Chicago Blackhawks is able to go in and beat the number 1 team in the Metropolitan Division. And the Hurricanes are leading that division by a pretty healthy margin. I believe it's 6 points. 69 points on the season. They're one of just a handful of teams across the league that has over 30 wins already. They're 7-1-2 in their last 10. That's a good win to come away with in their own building. It's not even like it was at the UC, and you could still say like, "Hey, that's a great win," and maybe you have because you had the advantage of the second change or what have you. To be able to go into their building and do what they did was genuinely impressive, and I think it was a great game all around for the Hawks. And again,
the one thing I can't say is you would have liked to see them not just continuously give up goals.
Sure, but I think that is part of that growing process, because there's the high of, okay, we got one. And then a really good veteran hockey team like the Carolina Hurricanes is going to find a way to come back down when maybe your guard's down a little bit and take advantage of that. And that's what we continued to see. But they kept bouncing back. They kept fighting. They didn't give up. They didn't pack it in and say, all right, this team's better than us. They kept fighting all the way down to the end. And I think that was very critical for the development of a lot of these young guys on this roster right now in moving forward. And you can make, I think, arguably the same argument about the Tampa Bay game just the next night. You're a couple shootout saves away from another victory against a really good team currently leading the Atlantic Division, is for sure going to make the playoffs, is going to be a threat for a Stanley Cup. And the Hawks went toe-to-toe with them. And even though they got terribly outshot, Ryan Green has a beautiful highlight reel goal in that one. Arvid Soderblom overall that game had a very good game. He got it. He looked a little exposed in the shootout. I know we're going to talk about that as well, but I think especially on the second half of a back-to-back that goes all the way to the wire again, you're gassed. That's a lot of hockey in 48 hours, and they still made it a fight. They still took it all the way to the end. And Big Lou showing off the mitts. And, you had a lot of positives still, I think, in that game, despite the outcome. And sometimes when you're a young team that's learning how to win, you're going to have those type of games where I added it. I don't know about you, Tone, but I added it to the games that want backtracker. I think that one was a very much a game that, even though you were outshot, you were in it all the way to the end. You had a really quality scoring chance in overtime that, if the puck's not bouncing and bounces over our Andre Burakovsky's stick, it's over.
Yeah, I don't know how that didn't find its way into the back of the net, but
brutal.
I'm happy with the fact that they walk out of that back-to-back, a road and home, back-to-back with 3 out of 4 possible points against two division-leading teams. That, in and of itself, speaks to the growth that we've seen so far from the Chicago Blackhawks this year. There were definitely points, and I agree with you. This is on the games they'll want backtracker. There are definitely points in that game where if the execution was a little bit cleaner, you're talking about 4 out of 4 points instead of 3 out of 4. So
definitely,
we'll get into the Arvid Soderblom and the shootout thing. And yes, obviously, you had the good big Lou moment already covered there. We'll talk about that in just a minute, or towards the bottom of the show again. But Arvid Soderblom, like you said, played a tremendous hockey game. The Hawks were getting just outshot left and right. I think at a certain point in halfway through the second, they still hadn't mustered 7 or 8 shots on net. That's not good.
I think they were stuck at 6 through 2 periods, Tom.
Yeah, it was not pretty offensively to start this one. But I think the fight, and I talked about in this win over Carolina, that fight and the ability to just stay in the game is really what carried them all the way to take this to a shootout and get themselves an extra point. Now, the Soderblom keeping you in this game doesn't need to be, understated. They probably do the same thing with Spencer Knight if it's not a back-to-back. But, man, you said something before we even got on here about Arvid Soderblom and how he looked giving up that final goal. That's just fucking inexcusable.
Yeah.
So I want your thoughts on it.
I think the last 2 were really bad. I think the Kucherov goal was just sick. It's Kucherov being Kucherov. That's one of your league's best scorers. He's ruthless, right? Like when you got him with nothing but the goalie, he's probably going to score more often than not. But the second to last goal was the, in my opinion, the roughest. I think the Dominic James goal was respectable, even though I think he dropped a little late on the 5-hole. But that was really bad because he is I think too far out of his net. And B, you can very clearly on the broadcast, and I remember thinking this live as it's happening, you can see that open side of the net because he is not in position to cut it off. And Tampa Bay's shooter, I'm going to butcher his name. I think it's Conclaus or something like that is how you say his name. He saw it too and just ripped it right inside the post to bury it. And that's the difference between Big Lou's sick goal being the winner and, okay, you got to go do it again. And then they get stopped. And then, of course, Dominic James gets his revenge. The team, the organization that drafted him, he gets to score the game winner against. So I think, you look at that and you're just like, man, that's tough at the end of the day because you're there, you're in it. And again, I think because of the new overtime format, these younger goalies in the NHL are seeing less and less shootouts. So it is kind of an adjustment to be good at a shootout. Like I think the fact that Spencer Knight's as good in the shootout as he's been is respectable and is commendable. I think the same goes for a lot of goaltenders that are young across the league that have respectable shootout records because you don't see it as much anymore. But man, though, it's just such a tough break in that moment. When Soderblom had been great all game, kept them in it, made big saves, constantly was fighting through traffic all night. And then just for it to end that way really just like sours a great night from Soderblom that I think that's just unfortunate because
but he winds up in these situations all the time. Like the goaltending isn't always horrible, right?
No,
we've seen sort of the Jekyll and Hyde 2 versions of Arvid Soderblom. The problem is just sort of that consistency. That I was on the timeline giving Arvid Soderblom some credit that night, and people were like, "Hey, that's not something we hear very often." But credit where credit's due. He was facing a heavy workload of shots. I get your point on the whole shootout thing, but we've been here before with Arvid Soderblom in the shootout.
Yes.
I just wonder, and there's probably a reason teams don't do this. You want to have your goaltender in there that started the whole entire game in the shootout. But, if this team starts getting competitive and Arvid Soderblom's still around and we go into shootouts, I'd look at pulling Spencer Knight in there. Remember when we had this conversation back when Robin Leonard was
when Robin Leonard was,
yeah. He's just not good in the shootout, man.
Yeah. And some guys aren't. I mean, that happens, right? Some goaltenders are just not good in shootouts because it's not. And this is why I think a lot of people don't like the shootout, especially like hockey purists. It's not real hockey. Like how often do you have where there's no defensive pressure in any form on a shooter? Almost never.
Unless it's a penalty shot.
Yeah, exactly. Unless it's a penalty shot. And even, because on a traditional breakaway, at least you still have a back-checking defenseman that's at least applying some level of timing pressure to the shooter.
Right. You have to make a decision.
Right. So, it's tough because, like you said, not every goaltender is good in the shootout. But again, and I think Arvid Soderblom's raised his game a little bit since we saw Drew Commesso up because I think he made a great comment. I think he addressed it like a pro when they asked him about, is it hard to see Commesso having success knowing that there's, pressure on you? And he's like, at this league, everybody's competing. Like if there's not competition, you're not doing it right. Like there should be competition at all times. That's the purpose of this being the best league in the world. So he understands that. And he's like, hey, good for the kid. He had a great game. He helped us win a game when we needed to win a hockey game when both he and Spencer Knight were unavailable. And I think he's played some good hockey since that moment. But again, I think just a really unfortunate end to a overall strong night from Arvid Soderblom, especially in a back-to-back when the guys in front of you are tired. They had a long game the night before in Carolina. You got to take that quick flight back home, get ready for an early game because ESPN decides it needs to be
what was that about?
Start. It's because they're playing an East Coast team, and ESPN wants to appeal to the East Coast. It's always been that way. It's always going to be that way. That's just how it is, man.
It's not fun.
It's dumb. I agree. It's dumb. It should have just been a 7:00 game. It would have been fine. It's Friday night. If you can't stay up till 11:00 on the East Coast, get over yourself. Half of the cities on the Eastern time zone don't even sleep anyway. So what does it matter? Neither here nor there. But Tone, speaking of players being gassed, I think we saw that come to a fruition and pulp on Sunday in that third period.
Yeah.
They battled hard for 2 periods. They kept themselves in it. And then just 2 really nice plays by Florida. Sam Skevich with a good shot that squeaks through Spencer Knight and just trickles over the goal line. And then a sick play by Evan Rodriguez and an even sicker shot by Carter Verhaeghe ultimately seals that game. The last one was just salt in the wound after the empty netter. But they really played only one bad period of hockey in 3 games this weekend. And this was a tough gauntlet because, as we mentioned, Metropolitan leading Carolina Hurricanes, Atlantic leading Tampa Bay Lightning. And this is a Florida Panthers team that just got Matthew Tkachuk back and is only 3 points out of a playoff spot right now in the Eastern Conference. They're looking to get back in, maybe get Alexander Barkov back for the playoffs and take a fucking run at a 3rd straight Stanley Cup. All great hockey teams that they just played this weekend, and they really held their own when you had no Teuvo Teravainen. You are, relying heavily on a young defense as you have all season and young goaltenders and a lot of young forwards to step up. Frank Nazar's, I think, still getting his legs back a little bit despite returning to action in this stint. But like Oliver Moore stepped up big. Even Connor Bedard didn't have his greatest 3-game stretch, but they were still in every single one of these games because of who was stepping up. And I think that's even though they went 1-1-1 in this stretch and only took a 3 out of a possible 6 points, I'm still very encouraged about what we saw from the Blackhawks over the last 4 days.
Well said. Well said. I think that there's definitely, we're not breaking any news here when we say that there's still steps to be taken for this definitely. Blackhawks team. The Florida game, I wanted that win selfishly, just because it would have capped off what was probably the best stretch of hockey over 3 games that we've seen this team play all year. When it comes to, the quality of opponent that they're playing against. And, that's a lot of hockey in a short period of time. Obviously, some of that catches up with you towards the end there, but it's a really good Florida team, man. That this wasn't a game that I was overly pissed off that they lost. Obviously, like I said, you selfishly wanted that win just to, feel even better about this team coming out of this stretch. But I still think that the Hawks are susceptible to periods like this where they're going to get beaten. And you're going to see some of that youth. You're going to see some of that inexperience. And you just have to hope that they grow from it. Obviously, it's good to get a little break here without as many games coming up over the next few days. But, the quality of opponent is going to slightly go down from what they just faced. I don't want to see them fall into a trap, though. I want to see that same level of competitiveness, and I want to see them be able to blow the doors off one of these upcoming opponents after, going through this gauntlet stretch. I would consider that 3 of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, so especially with Florida. I know that their record doesn't exactly represent that, but a much different team than the team that started this year out.
Most definitely.
The only other thing that hurts in that one is, you get Florida throwing their backup goalie at us, and then not that he's got a bad record himself. I think he was 3-0 over his last 3 starts before playing the Hawks, but you want to see them take advantage of Florida if they're going to, toss their backup at you. And I'm sure that one sort of stings for Spencer Knight a little bit.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. And a happy Monday to you, Daniel Barry. Thanks for hopping in the comments here today. Tony, I agree. Just kind of back to what you said, right? Again, confirming everything here. Leading the Atlantic Division at 33-14-4. They're 8-1-1 in their last 10. It's the Tampa Bay Lightning with 70 points. Carolina, we mentioned that they're 7-1-2 in their last 10. They have 69 points. 32, 15, and 5. That leads the Metropolitan. And then, of course, as we noted, Florida, they are just on the outside looking in, but they've played some good hockey recent. They're 6-4 in their last 10, and they've won 3 straight, 28, 20, and 3 with 59 points. That puts them 4 points out of a playoff spot, but they have 2 games in hand over the Boston Bruins, who hold that last wild card spot right now. So I agree with you, Tony. I think 3 of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. I mean, again, this Florida Panthers team is still largely the same team that won the Stanley Cup a year ago, minus Alexander Barkov, and for most of the season, Matthew Tkachuk. Now that he's back, that's a big get for them as they look to get in the playoffs and try to make some noise here down the stretch. And to your point, Tony, that gauntlet coming up, we'll talk a little bit in depth about it toward the end of the show, obviously in our What's on Tap next segment. But I mean, Minnesota and San Jose are probably the 2 best teams you're going to play in that grouping. And I would argue, I mean, Columbus and San Jose roughly have the same record. Pittsburgh's a good team. I mean, they continue to find ways to win. But again, I think a team that I think the Hawks would like to offer a little payback after the kind of snoozer of a game that the Hawks had against them in that Sunday night game back at, I believe it was the end of November when they lost 7-3. At the UC, and that was really kind of the only outlier. Or pardon me, end of December. It was right before the New Year, and that was probably the worst game that they played from December 27th until the flu bug started to hit. 10 days into January. So I think that's a thing that's going to be a lot. Sonny says here, Ron, I just want you to know this 40-year-old father of 2 who lives 45 minutes west of the statement. Appreciated an earlier 6 p.m. puck drop on a Friday. Understood and fair. I think a lot of other people didn't appreciate it, especially if you're working till 5 o'clock and can't get to the United Center before 6. It looked like a little bit less of a crowd than I would expect on a Friday night. But understood. I get it.
It was also pretty damn cold.
It was cold. It was cold. And, again, it was, it's again, when it's a Friday, I like when there's a
more ruckus crowd.
Yeah, even if it's a 7 o'clock start, it doesn't need to be a 7:30 start necessarily, but I like when it's a little bit later. But that's just me personally. So, but Zone again, 3 tough games, but this team continues to move forward. They will play again on Tuesday. We're recording here on Monday evening, so a quick turnaround here for this Hawks team after that Florida game. Tony, let's talk about some roster moves here. There was rumors, rumblings, reports, whatever you want to call it, earlier this afternoon on Monday that Jeff Blashill more or less hinted that there was going to be a demotion. One of the forwards was going down to Rockford. They really didn't say who, but then you saw that the line rushes in practice, and when there was the 5th line and it was Nick Lardis on the 5th line, I think everybody kind of knew Lardis was going to be involved. I thought there was a chance they were also going to send Colton Dock down as well to let him get some minutes down in Rockford, but just Nick Lardis is the one that heads down to Rockford. Tony, I'll talk a little bit in depth about it later, but I don't think this is unexpected. The team's getting healthy. Teuvo Teravainen's back. Jason Dickinson's back. Frank Nazar's back. Like, everybody's back now. This is kind of the team that we saw at the beginning of the season largely here on the ice now for the Chicago Blackhawks. Lardis played well. I think you and I both agree that it was a respectable 21-game stint in his first action up in the league. But I think you could see that there were times he was overwhelmed. And I think now this is what I like that the Blackhawks aren't afraid to do. Bring a guy up, let him, get some run. Obviously, the Connor Bedard injury really, I think, forced their hand here more than anything, of just like, we need somebody that's got skill. He comes up, he produces a little bit, but now he knows A, what it's like to be in the NHL, B, gets a taste of the action, and now has a plan of, I need to work on these things. I'm going to go take these back to Rockford, be the guy for the next, probably the rest of the season, realistically, unless there's a lot of injuries that happen post-Olympic break. Go dominate, go be great, and then you put yourself in a position to make this team potentially next season, or get another call up to the NHL when some of the veterans on this team potentially get sold off at the deadline. So, again, I'll get into it a little bit more with Nick Lardis, but any thoughts from you, Tony?
Yeah, I agree with the fact that I don't think that this stint was a disaster, or it wasn't overwhelmingly positive either. It was he proved that he could stick around in the NHL a little bit. A couple of things that I noticed in his first 21, maybe lacks a little bit of the physicality that you'd like to see out of him. He got tossed around a little bit. I think that they'll definitely work on some of that, sending him back down to Rockford. I think he really saw what this game speed was and got, himself a little bit up to, I don't want to say the level that he needs to be yet, but really early on in that stint, there was obviously a little bit of a gap there when it came to the physicality, and going into, some of the tougher areas just seemed to get knocked off his skates a little bit too easy. Other than that, though, I mean, he showed the offensive prowess that he has. There were signs of it. Obviously, you want to see a little bit more finish, but it was good that he was able to get some points on the board there as well. But I think when you said that, it was out of necessity because Connor Bedard went down, I agree with that. I think their hand was forced. I don't think that they really wanted to call Nick Lardis up at this juncture yet. And you've preached patience with him all season. I don't think that you had it on the radar. Maybe a stint in that capacity where, there's injuries to some of your better offensive players. But I'm fine with him going back down. I don't think he's really going to be all too missed at the moment, especially when you have Teravainen coming back as well. So there's only so many spots for guys, and Nick Lardis, odd man out, obviously. We hope as Hawks fans that he develops even further and becomes an elite scorer here. But, he provided some secondary offense when the team needed some secondary depth offense. And that's exactly what they asked him to do. And like you said, I think, him going back down and just being the guy in that top six down in Rockford is going to be way better for him than sort of jumbling around on the third or fourth line here in Chicago.
Most definitely. I agree. When you got a young player that's got things to work on, extended minutes is never a bad thing. And that's what Lardis is going to get down in Rockford, playing on the first line. He's going to play on the first power play. He's going to get the minutes he needs to continue to work on things. While on the topic, Tony, we were discussing why Lardis came up and injuries and things like that. Field Division asks here, Bedard's still hurt, or did he come back too early from injury? I think he's been hurt all season, Tony. Because the way that Jeff Blashill and the front office reacted to, kind of when the injury happened, they were like, he's kind of already been dealing with something, is kind of what they made it sound like with the shoulder. I think right now what we're seeing, I don't think it's either one of those. I think he's hurt, but I don't think it's like he's hurt and that's why he hasn't produced. Because he's not taking draws. And this was something that I noticed last season. When they would play Bedard on the wing in those like one-off games, Bedard would disappear because he doesn't know how to play wing. He's used to being the primary puck carrier. He's used to playing the center position. Right now, because he's not taking draws, he even talked about it with playing with Ryan Green, that there's times where Green's going to be the center and they just communicate that out. And sometimes Bedard's going to be the center on defensive pursuit and offensive pursuit. I think he's kind of just getting used to being that kind of bounce back and forth between center and wing on any given shift. Mm-hmm. There's an acclimation period to that I think he's got to find. Again, once he's fully healthy, which I assume probably won't be until maybe after the Olympic break, maybe next season even. But I think if you start seeing him take draws again in March, I think we'll start to see the Connor Bedard that we've seen all at the beginning of the year return, because he's just used to playing center. Like certain guys are just need to play a certain position. And I think Connor Bedard's skill set better suits him to play center because he's the primary puck handler versus a guy who's a complementary piece on the wing. And I think that's just his style of game. And I think there's an acclimation happening there. But that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of this on X, specifically through this weekend, because, I think that there's just this expectation on Connor Bedard, and we've talked about this a little bit on this show, and even his first year in the league, there's an expectation that this kid's going to score every night because of, his overall status, number 1 overall draft pick, generational talent. I think, it could be a combination of a couple things, Ron. It could be, that the injury is still lingering, and as a effect of that is the fact that he can't take faceoffs, so he's got to play out of his natural position. Obviously, you want him on the ice, not just sitting on the sideline because he can't take faceoffs. They've talked about it being a high re-injury rate for what he went through here. I guess no, they have an official word, but we've heard separated shoulder. Some of that could still be lingering in the offense, like in his offense. I don't think he came back too early. It's really hard to keep Connor Bedard off the ice, at least according to everything that we've heard, Ron.
Definitely.
But I think when you say next season, that's something that's popped up in my head too. Was this something that they're just trying to get him through this year playing because he's going into a contract year? Is it something that they're waiting for the offseason to get cleaned up? We don't know. We don't know that answer. Now, he's still pretty effective in his current form. It's just not that jump off the page at you Connor Bedard talent that people want to see, which is, 2 assists and a goal every night and, highlight reel plays and whatnot. And I don't think we're ever going to be done with this cycle of, what's Connor Bedard going through whenever he goes through a stretch of whether it be 3 to 5 to 10 games where you're just not seeing the production that you're expecting out of Connor Bedard. There's a lot of people asking, is he still hurt? What's he dealing with? It's obvious he's not 100% because he's not taking the faceoffs. To me, that it clear as day. And they've said it that he's not 100%. So yeah, I don't know. I don't mean to try and like temper expectations because you want to, obviously with the way that this season's gone, looking at the standings update, you're teetering here on a playoff spot. You want him to be, full gear, but I just don't. I don't think it's happening until at least after the Olympic break. And I would say more conservatively, your next season statement was probably where I would expect it to be more accurate.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is worth noting, Tony, to your point. So he goes out after that St. Louis game, right? Comes back that first game, still getting his legs underneath him, 20 shifts, a little under what he normally has done, doesn't put up any points, but he had 2 assists in that Nashville shootout win or that shutout win in Nashville. He didn't score against Calgary, but he had an assist against Boston. And then, it was an empty netter, but he still scored against Winnipeg. So he had 4 points in a 4-game stretch there.
Right.
It was just
still effective, but
right. But it was also just this 3-game stretch now where he had nothing against 3 of the best teams they're going to play all season. And
it's also amplified because it was on national television, Ron.
Yes, of course. And then on top of it, though, he also played more shifts. He was getting back to his 23, 24, 25 shifts a night that we're used to seeing him play. So, again, he's getting ramped up again. He's getting used to playing with, the shoulder and not taking draws. And again, I think when you're bouncing between wing and center all night in terms of your responsibility, it's going to throw your game off a little bit, believe it or not. So I fully expect Bedard to be almost himself again after the All-Star break, or not the All-Star break, pardon me, the Olympic break. With, again, like, hey, next year, he's fully healthy. It's going to be fucking awesome. And I think we see a lot of what we saw early in the season from Bedard when he's 100%. And I don't think I'll take if he's putting up 4 points in 4 games. Like, if he does that the rest of the season, I would be pleasantly happy. This was just a weird 3-game stretch where they played 3 really good fucking teams. And when you're without guys like Teravainen, who do make a difference, whether you like it or not.
And there's been movement in the lines too.
There has. And that was the other point I was going to make. So I'm glad you said that. Oliver Moore was playing with him this last game, right? He's used to playing with Ryan Green. He's used to playing with Andre Burakovsky or a Teuvo Teravainen or a Tyler Bertuzzi. So there was a little bit of movement too and guys to get used to. And I think that's a huge piece of that as well. Tony, really quick, just to kind of round out this roster move and Bedard chatter. I wanted to note just about Lardis, 26 points in 24 games before his call up. Brett Sini leads the Rockford Ice Hogs with 33 points. I firmly believe that either by the end of the season or by the next time Lardis is called up to the NHL, he will be leading the Rockford Ice Hogs in points. So if you need to go watch some Rockford Ice Hogs hockey, especially during the Olympic break, because they will continue to play, go watch Nick Lardis play hockey. You'll get a front row seat. Tony, also worth noting along the Olympic break here, and I think this was an important point. I read this today from our friends over at Puckpedia. There is a rule in place for how transactions can occur before the freeze as well. If a player has suited up in 16 of the 20 games prior to the freeze, they cannot be sent to the AHL, even if they're waiver exempt. Because that was the rule, is they have to be waiver exempt if they're going to be sent down after the freeze goes into place. But if they meet that 16 of 20 rule, they can't be sent down, even if they're waiver exempt. So now by sending Lardis down, he doesn't meet that. He's not on the roster, so you don't have to worry, because he would have exceeded that. He would have played in every game. He's already played in 21 straight games to this point. So you let him go down and get that development time now during the Olympic break, while your guys that have played every single night all season long can take that rest time and get ready for some late February hockey then after the next 5 games. So just an important note, I think, with the Lardis stuff as well to keep in mind. But speaking of roster moves and movement and things of that nature, Tony, we are kind of unofficially approaching a trade deadline here because of this Olympic freeze. And there's a lot of rumblings and rumors out there, whether you listen to Elliot Friedman, David Pagnotta, Frank Saravelli, what have you. There's probably going to be a lot of movement. There was already a trade tonight that was of relative importance that is happening before this Olympic freeze. Carson Soucy was sent from the New York Rangers to the New York Islanders in a trade. So a notable defenseman was moved. A lot of people around the league believe this is going to be an active February 4th deadline of sorts before the actual March 6th deadline that we'll get then, when everything has to be completed by because of this Olympic break. So this is relevant of what we're going to talk about here, because the Blackhawks have been brought up a lot. We know that they are going to sell off expiring veterans. Saravelli has pretty much doubled, tripled, and quadrupled down on it over the last month or so. So Connor Murphy, Jason Dickinson, Nick Foligno, only if he wants to leave and chase a cup is pretty much the asterisk next to him. What did they do with Ilya Mikheyev? There was rumblings that they were going to try to extend him, but the last report we heard was they hadn't approached his camp yet about a potential extension. Do you look at this team now and maybe say, hey, we've got guys that can do what Mikheyev does for a lot cheaper, and they're young and they need playing time? Kyle Davidson came out in the last 48 hours with a quote more or less saying, our goal is to give young players opportunities to play, which immediately screams to me they're going to try and free up as many roster spots as they can between now and March 6th. And whatever that looks like, whether it's at February 4th deadline or March 6th deadline, it's going to happen. So I turn to you, Tony, and I ask you, first off, what's the likelihood of each of these guys that we've listed moving? You can give me a 1 out of 10, 10 being most likely, 1 being least likely. But also, how many of these moves potentially do we see before the February 4th trade freeze? Or do you think the Blackhawks wait until the potential carnage of the Olympics to then make some moves before the March 6th deadline, when teams are maybe just a little bit more desperate?
Yeah, we kind of touched on this last week, Ron, and I thought that, it might be advantageous for them to wait until after the Olympics to do some of this. That being said, I think a lot of teams are going to want to get a lot of their business done beforehand, especially with guys who aren't going overseas, just to know that you get this healthy body and have that time off and then be able to integrate them into your system when the league starts back up again. So I can see it as a good opportunity where people may get a little more aggressive, even maybe beforehand, but you never know. Injuries create a lot of desperation. Now, with the crop that the Hawks have, let's be honest about it. It's not the best in terms of what you're going to get back in return for a lot of these guys. I don't know.
Do we know that for sure though? Because there's rumblings that Saravelli believes
Maybe
that
Ilya
Jason
Mikheyev can
Dickinson,
fetch something.
he thinks Jason Dickinson can fetch them a second round pick and a prospect, Tony.
I see that seems way too high for me. I just don't
I
understand
agree.
why.
But if that's what, and I think that's going to be,
I think some of that comes from the parity in the league, though.
Bidding wars.
Yeah, some of it could come from just the market is not going to be as great. I mean, if Jason Dickinson nets you a second rounder and a prospect, I'm doing it in a heartbeat. We talked about Nick Foligno a lot last week in terms of, you know, what they're getting out of Nick Foligno right now. I more or less see him as someone who would probably want to stay here unless the opportunity's right. So, you know, I think he's probably got a really low chance to leave unless it's, you know, somebody wants him. And I'm not entirely sure if you really need a Nick Foligno if you're one of these top teams, unless you have, you know, a real role that you're lacking. Connor Murphy, I think he'll probably get moved. Unfortunately, the longest tenured Blackhawk, and I've loved what Connor Murphy's brought to the table so far this year. And man, that last goal he scored the other night was pretty silky himself there, getting some defensive goals. I love it. But I could see him going ways to somebody who needs a bottom pairing defenseman or even a seventh defenseman type a player, even though Connor Murphy's, in my opinion, a little bit better than that. But I think the real question, and you brought this one to it, is Ilya Mikheyev and what do you do? Now, that's one that I actually want to stay. I want Ilya Mikheyev to stay with the Chicago Blackhawks to the penalty kill. And, you know, just he fits with this team, Ron. And I think that it would be sort of one of those holes in this roster. I think you'll see the penalty kill sort of struggle a little bit if they were to move on from him. And that's something that the Hawks have been really good at this season. So I would hate to see him moved, but you know, if the price is right, I'm pretty sure that, you know, from the signals that Kyle Davidson has sent out, I think they'll move on from him if they get what they want in any sort of offer. So I would add probably Matt Grzelcyk to this list as well, Ron, as someone who could potentially be moved on from. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if we've got, you know, a couple of different defensemen with us down the stretch here after this roster clears out. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a solid chance that all these guys move, with Nick Foligno being the one that I see potentially just saying, nope, I'm the captain of this team. I want to stay here. I've got my family here right now. I don't want to move in the middle of the school year and whatnot and deal with all that. But, you know, you never know. Maybe Nick Foligno has a place he wants to go and chase a cup. And if that's the case, I don't blame him one bit.
Yeah, I think your logic is pretty sound. I really, really am curious about what the value is going to be. And I think that's where Kyle Davidson's leaning. I don't think he's just going to move these guys for like late draft picks. I think there has to be a move that makes sense. Like it has to be being able to get something that's second round or better, you know, or a couple.
Do you think Connor Murphy's fetching a second rounder better?
I think he could.
Nick Foligno is fetching a second rounder better.
Here's the thing that we have to keep in mind, Tone. The trade deadline is entirely based off of what the market is, right? It's not necessarily like what a true value of a player is. It's not the off season where these guys can be moved on a clean slate. When there's so much parity that there is in the NHL right now, there's a lot of teams that really aren't in a position to sell off right now. Let's just take a look at the Eastern Conference, for example. The only team I would really for sure consider a seller right now, Tony, is the New York Rangers. And they've pretty much come out and explicitly said that they're selling.
Yeah.
Which ironically, the Blackhawks were linked to Vincent Trocheck in recent reports, which I thought was a little puzzling just because I don't think I don't think Kyle Davidson doesn't fit. But I don't think Kyle Davidson's against acquiring at the deadline for what that is, but it would have to make sense moving forward, right? A young player maybe needs to change of scenery. guy that just is a flyer type guy. We've seen him do that a few times over the last few years for a late round draft pick or, a prospect swap just to see what a guy is. But that one's a little off the board. But outside of them, every other team in the Eastern Conference is within 7 points of the final wildcard spot. I don't think Ottawa's going to hard sell. I don't think Columbus is going to hard sell. Columbus could maybe soft sell. Same with Ottawa. Same with maybe New Jersey. But, I don't think the Capitals, Maple Leafs, Flyers, or Panthers are selling. I think they're all buyers, in fact, if anything. So there's only 4 teams in the East that I could see moving assets in any capacity. Then you look into the West and make the same argument. If the Hawks are I'll call it the bleeding line, there's only 4 other teams in the West that would potentially sell. I don't think Nashville is going to sell. They're 3 points out of a playoff spot. Seattle and Los Angeles are technically tied with the Sharks for that final wild card spot. The only reason they're below them is because of total win number. It's the Hawks with 50 points, and then you got Calgary, Winnipeg, St. Louis, and Vancouver. And Winnipeg's a weird one. I think Winnipeg would.
Is it the right decision though at 5 points out of a playoff spot? Because you're gonna get the blowback from certain areas, right?
I think it's
of this fan base.
Yeah, sure. And I think it's the right move if you're not re-signing any of these guys, there's explicit value there where you can continue to stock the cupboard and you can give some of these young players that, Tony, the same people that are probably going to bitch and moan about them selling off assets are probably the same people that have wanted to see Kevin Korchinski and Sam Renzel and Nick Lardis and all these other guys. That's the way that you get those guys playing time is by moving Connor Murphy, Matt Grzelcyk,
There's a name,
Ilya Mikheyev, right?
There's a name that can move at the deadline that you just brought up.
Who? Kevin Korchinski? Maybe. But again, it would have to make sense, I think, for them in order to move him. And I think they really do want to see him for an extended role. That's why I think their bottom pairing is good as gone. I think Grzelcyk can go to a contender.
Yep.
Murphy can go to a contender. Renzel and Korchinski come up. You shuffle the pairings however you want to shuffle them. Maybe it's just Renzel and Korchinski are your third pairing. And you just see how they play the rest of the year. And they're young enough where, hey, if you got to go back to Rockford again next year, so be it. But at least you can see their development at the NHL level and what they've worked on in Rockford over the course of majority of this season. Because again, Korchinski named AHL All-Star yet again, along with the aforementioned Nick Lardis. Sam Renzel has done some really nice things as well down in Rockford. So I think that's where it would make sense, Tone, is hey, if you have made the decision that Ilya Mikheyev is not a part of your future and you don't want to extend him, absolutely see if the value's out there for him. I think see if the value's out there for him regardless. And if it's out there, great. And if not, maybe you do hold on to him and then you do kind of a Ryan Donato where you see, hey, where do you fit?
Right.
Because again, if you're going to open up spots for young guys, you still have Ryan Donato under contract for 3 more years after this one. You still got Teuvo Teravainen under contract for another year, as do you Andre Burakovsky. And then you've got Tyler Bertuzzi for another 2 years after this one. So, and there's been rumblings and rumors that maybe the Hawks can move a Teuvo Teravainen or even an Andre Burakovsky if the price is right. And if it means opening up a spot for a young guy, I think Kyle Davidson's willing to do it, only assuming that those young guys are ready, right? There's a lot of the kind of Antoine Frondel is going to be their, trade deadline acquisition. So maybe you see him by mid-March, best case scenario, in my opinion. You won't see Kanserov till next year because of the nature of his contract. It doesn't expire till June, technically. So he can't sign until after then. So really, you can only really add one more guy other than your crop from Rockford or any guys that are in college that you would want to sign. It'll be interesting to kind of see, what happens and where those go and just how they approach this thing, Tony. But I'm not going to lie. I'm a little excited for February 4th because I think we're going to see a couple of really notable trades before the Olympic freeze.
It's like a Christmas Eve for you.
A little bit. It's like it's almost it's like the start. It's like Black Friday when the Mariah Carey music starts playing at the mall and it teases you for Christmas. That's kind of what this February 4th deadline is for me.
There you go.
It gets you in the spirit for March 6th. It's going to be great. But yeah, interested to see what the Hawks do, because I really do think there's 15 different ways that this trade deadline can go for the Chicago Blackhawks when it's all said and done, including this, this aforementioned Olympic freeze deadline that we've been talking about a little bit here as well, Tony.
You're getting me excited for spring, Ron.
Tony, I'm ready for spring. Let me tell you. Let me tell you. But hey, what do you say? We get into some of our segments here this evening, Tony?
Let's do it.
It's time to ruffle some feathers.
As always, it is time to ruffle some feathers. Mr. Marchese, I would like to give it to you first. Are you ruffling any feathers this evening?
I was going to go off on how horrible ESPN is, but I feel like that's not even ruffling anybody's feathers anymore. I'm just still pissed off that I missed part of the broadcast on Thursday or Friday, whichever game that was. It was on ESPN Plus. I don't really have too much to ruffle here, Ronald, but I know that you've got some secret notes in the rundown for yourself to go off on something.
Yeah, I don't even think mine's necessarily ruffling some feathers at this point either. It's just the cold hard truth, and it has to be said. It was time for Nick Lardis to be sent down. And that's okay. This is not a ruffling some feathers to say I told you so. This is just to tell the cold hard truth. I think what Nick Lardis did was commendable. I think, 7 points in 21 games in your first ever NHL action, largely playing in the middle six, getting a little bit of power play time, I think was impressive. But there were notable things that he is lacking in his game right now that he needs to figure out. The physicality, as we touched on a little bit earlier, Tony, I think you called out brilliantly. I think that's a huge piece of it. And it's not necessarily to say that he needs to be a physical player. It's more just how do you manage being in a physical game, right? How can you manage, taking body contact and not getting pushed off your feet, not almost getting bullied? So that's what it felt like at times. The teams would go out of their way to bully Nick Lardis as much as possible. Adam Lowry did it for the Winnipeg Jets in that game at home. Just went out of his way to bully Nick Lardis as much as possible. We saw it in Carolina, how many times he took some brutal hits. The whole reason Oliver Moore stood up and fought for his old roommate down in Rockford.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to figure out that physicality aspect for sure. I also think, though, Tony, that those goal numbers would have been higher for Nick Lardis. He needs to become more comfortable getting closer to the slot when he shoots. Because every time he tees up a one-timer, it's from outside the face-off dots. There's not a lot of guys in the NHL that are going to score from that spot. And let's be honest, Nick Lardis is a great shot. There's no doubt about his shot. And he found the back of the net a lot, and there were a few times where, he just narrowly missed, right? We saw it in that Carolina game, and I think that's one of the things I was really happy about that goal is he scores out in front of the net. He needs to do that more. And I think that's something he can take to Rockford and get comfortable playing in the slot and knowing you're going to take contact and things like that, because that's where you're going to score, especially when you have his type of shot. Think about that Carter Verhaeghe goal we just saw the Panthers score on Sunday. That's the type of shit I can see Nick Lardis doing in the future. Those quick shots right in the slot. Throw goalies off. They're not going to see it coming. You have the heavy shot. Those are the little things that he needs to work on in his game. And again, I think he's going to go down to Rockford. I think he's going to dominate. I think he's going to be even better than he was the first time around. I firmly believe, like I said a little bit earlier, by the time he's either called up next or the end of the season, whichever comes first, he's going to lead the Ice Hogs in points. I firmly believe that. I think he's that good of a player. I think he has a future in the NHL. But there's just those little things that he needs to do. And I noted this a little bit earlier, and I'm going to expound on it a little bit. I like that the Blackhawks are willing to give guys opportunities to show off. And we saw this with Wyatt Kaiser. Wyatt Kaiser is a great example of this. How many times was Wyatt Kaiser on the bus back and forth down I-90 to Rockford to work on things? But every time he came back, he looked better because he did work on those things and he improved his game. And now look at it. You can make the argument he's been one of their most stable defensemen this entire season, which is a huge credit to him and how hard he worked. I think now they're giving Nick Lardis that opportunity. Hey, you got the taste. Here's the things you need to go work on. Go do that. You work on those and you dominate in Rockford again, we'll bring you back up and let you try against the big boys again. I think he's going to get another opportunity, especially after the trade deadline. I really do. But now he can go down, he can play through this Olympic break in Rockford, get a ton of meaningful development time, work on
Probably
those
play in
things.
the All-Star game there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to play in the AHL All-Star game. That's going to be a cool event for him. Just keep working on your game. And I think it's going to be great. Again, I don't think this is a terrible ruffling feathers. It's just the cold, hard truth. It was time. He was due to go down and work on his game again, especially now that the team's getting healthy. But I think even before that, I think when we got to about the 13-14 game mark of his stint, that it was, you were seeing the signs that, like, okay, he's got to go back down. He's got to work on things, and that's okay. But I like that the Hawks were willing to give him an opportunity, but it was time. It was time for him to go back down to Rockford. Now this roster's healthy, so we'll see a full forward group. And quite frankly, I kind of like what they threw out there in the lines just today, Tony. Frank Nazar playing on Bedard's wing so he can take the draws for Bedard. Ryan Green playing a little bit in the bottom six, maybe bring some offensive flair down on that third line. And Oliver Moore as your second line center looks pretty fucking cool and tough, if you ask me. So
you like a good Oliver Moore as a second line center.
I like Oliver Moore as a center, period, man. I don't care if it's second line or third line. I think he can produce either way. And,
Yeah,
and we're gonna see a lot of it, and it's gonna be a lot of fun.
You're a big Oliver Moore guy, as am I. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with it. And we hinted on some of this earlier when I was talking about, the physicality aspects of this. And yeah, I mean, you can list off all the examples at times where, the team was in a little bit of trouble or had to fight back for, defending their teammate. And Lardis found himself on the receiving end of a lot of those hits. But yeah, I think that's a good cold hard truth. It might ruffle some feathers, but you're bringing the facts only here today, Ron.
Yeah, it'll surely ruffle a few people's feathers, but I'll tell you what, I bring you the cold hard truth with love, not with disdain or trying to prove a point. It's going to be good. And honestly, Blackhawks fans, if you're in the Chicagoland area and you're itching for hockey during the Olympic break, go watch an Ice Hogs game. You'll get to see Nick Lardis on display. Brett Sini is a treat to watch down in Rockford. You get to see Kevin Korchinski, Sam Renzel. Like, this is a great time if you need an excuse to go ahead and watch the Rockford Ice Hogs. You absolutely can do it when it's all said and done here because of just, what's going on and the pause in the action. I'm even pulling it up right here, Tony, for everybody at home. So in case they're confused and unsure of when they can watch, the Olympic break officially starts, technically speaking, on February 4th. That's the last Blackhawks game before the Olympics begin. Here's a few games that are just coming up now for the Rockford Ice Hogs. First off, the AHL All-Star game is in Rockford as well. So if you can score some tickets to that, do it. You got a pair of Rockford Ice Hogs involved. It's all-star-like competition. It's a great event. It's going to be right here in the state of Illinois in the coming weeks. But Friday, February 6th is Michael Layton Ring of Honor induction night. $2 beers and soft drinks. Screw City night, so they're wearing the cool Screw City jerseys. That's against the Iowa Wild at 7:00. Michael Layton going into the Ring of Honor for the Rockford Ice Hogs. Then you got the skills competition. That's Tuesday, February 10th in Rockford, and the All-Star game is Wednesday, February 11th. From there, then it's a Blackhawks centennial celebration the weekend of Valentine's Day. Saturday, the 14th, they play the Milwaukee Admirals at home. And on the 15th, the back-to-back games, the 4:00 game on that Sunday. There's a Drew Comesso bobblehead giveaway then on February 21st. That's a Saturday night game against the San Diego Gulls, and they'll play the Gulls again on that Sunday in just good old 4:00 Sunday action. And then your Hawks are back. So a couple of really neat opportunities to go watch some hockey out in Rockford here coming up, Tone. And you can watch Nick Lardis continue to develop his game. And
look at that Rockford Ice Hogs promo here from Ron Lutz.
Hey man, just we're trying to give the people the whole, as you said, the cold hard facts. But speaking of things that are cold, let's give out some stick taps.
Time to give out some stick taps.
Tony, I defer to you once again, sir. Who are you delivering your stick taps to?
I've got a couple, Ron. I got a couple stick taps to give out. First one is going to our guy, Big Lou, in the shootout. That was one of the nastiest shootout goals that I've seen in a long time. And I mean, it's better because it's Big Lou. This isn't the first time we've seen him flash a little bit of silky mitts this year, Ron. Big Lou's he knows how to score too.
He does.
So I got to give the guy some stick taps. I didn't see them going to Big Lou in that shootout at that spot. I felt like there was probably a lot of other options that Jeff Blashill could have went to. And he goes to Big Lou, and Big Lou gets the job done. Gotta love it. Stick taps to Big Lou. Second stick tap of the night goes out to our enforcer here at Four Feathers Podcast and on Tap Sportsnet, Mr. Patrick Comiskey, welcomed in addition to his family last week. Congratulations and stick taps to the Comiskies. I hope everybody's doing well over there. Ron, I might have another one, but I'm going to turn it back over to you. One might pop into my head here. Oh, Oliver Moore, happy 21st birthday. That's what it was. Way to celebrate that birthday with a victory and getting that game winner. That was the last one. Ron, back to you for your stick taps.
Yeah, man. Just quickly, Big Lou, great mitts. We love the offense that Big Lou brings. I really think he's playing himself into quite a contract after this season. I really do believe that. And I think it's going to be in Chicago. I think they like what he brings alongside Alex Vlasic as a future pairing in the long haul. Congratulations to the Comiskys. That is super exciting. Another member of the Four Feathers family has been brought into this world. Very, very cool. Glad that everybody is doing okay as well in the Comiskey family. And Tony, as you said, happy birthday to Oliver Moore. It's a great call out. And Tone, my stick tap goes to Nick Lardis. In the same vein of, hey, you need to go down.
A lot of Nick Lardis talk from Ron.
A lot of Nick Lardis talk.
Enough.
But he came up and held his own for 21 games, largely probably ahead of what the Blackhawks told him the game plan was going to be. I firmly believe Kyle Davidson told him, if it's up to us, you're playing the whole season in Rockford, and you're developing, and you're getting better, and then we'll give you a chance next year, or maybe at the end of the season when there's some roster spots available to get a taste before, competing for a spot in camp next year for a full-time roster spot. He gets called up early because of the injuries to Frank Nazar and Connor Bedard, gets thrust into the action, finds instant chemistry again with Oliver Moore from their time in Rockford together. They had some great moments. The goal against the Islanders right before the horn, where Oliver Moore looks up at the clock and kind of has the, oh shit, here we go, I got time, throws it across the ice to Lardis for the finish. Those are cool moments, and that's a great start to your NHL career, man. 5 goals in 21 games. Again, not even playing on the first or second line. They were largely the third line most of the time, and they were still finding ways to produce. So, again, as critical as I'm going to be of Nick Lardis and where he is in his game, I'm also going to give credit where it's due. And I think he did a really nice job in his first 21 games in the NHL. Go back down, dominate Rockford, work on those things, and the next time he comes up, I think we'll see a better player than we did when he came up this first time, and that's exciting. That's part of this rebuild. You want to see these guys, if they do go back down or have to go back down, come back a better player. We saw it with Wyatt Kaiser. We've seen it with Louis Crevier and his shuttle experience over the last 2 years prior to this one, and look what he's become now. We've seen it with a ton of these guys. It's always incredible to see them show up and show out like that, and I like that Nick Lardis was able to do that. I can't wait to see what he does in Rockford and when he returns then to Chicago, because I think he's been a great player. So big stick taps to him. And my good friend here in the comments, Eric, says, stick taps to you guys. Great show per usual. Thank you, Eric. We appreciate you watching along and listening along with us, man. It's always a pleasure. And I'll see you soon, buddy. We'll talk more Hawks over some beers in the near future. Tony, what's on tap next? Well, there's 5 games between now and the Olympic break, starting with Tuesday. It is a 7:00 start at the Minnesota Wild, probably the hardest team they're going to play before this Olympic break. Third place in the Central.
I want that one.
That'd be a big win, especially up in their own building. That's a 7:00 start. That's on CHSN. Then the Hawks are back in action on Thursday. Thursday and Friday is a back-to-back. Thursday, they'll start on the road. They're in Pittsburgh. That's a 6:00 start on CHSN. And then they're back home on Friday against the Columbus Blue Jackets. They will be wearing the black jerseys on Friday night at the United Center. It's a 7:30 start. Tony, will you be in attendance? Because I'll be in attendance.
I will be in attendance. That is confirmed. We will both be in attendance for that black jersey game. It's going to be very awesome Friday night.
Very awesome.
Tony, at a normal time, 7:30.
A normal 7:30 start. Tony, I do have a confession. I will not be in my normal seats for this game.
Oh no. Oh no. Where are you going to be sitting, Ronald?
I will be in the banner level suites for this
Ooh.
game. Yes, very excited about that. So, an old colleague of mine invited Katie and I to join them in the banner level suites for Friday night's game. So, I'll be a little above you, Tone. In
Okay.
fact, for this one. So I'll be sure to pick you out in the crowd and send you a sniper picture at some point before
you
the
go.
game is all over.
There you go. Did you
so that
move?
one's
Did you
gonna be
move
great.
you moved your tickets then, Ron?
I did
Nice.
successfully. They sold very quickly. They actually
Yes.
sold last week.
I
which
was looking at the
crazy.
prices on this one. This game's getting a little pricey.
Yeah, they moved quick. And I listed them probably toward the lower end of my section as well, and they sold like that. I was actually like pleasantly surprised that I was expecting them to sell this week now coming up. And they sold all the way last week already, so that was pretty cool.
Well,
But this
enjoy the
one,
banner level suites, and
thank you,
you're gonna have
thank
to
you.
let everybody know how those are. My
Definitely.
brother's been looking to find his way up to those as well, and I've been up there before the renovations. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
ever been all the way up there.
I've never been up there at all, so
You're pretty high up. I'll tell you that.
yeah. I'm excited. I'll be sure to post plenty of content from the banner level, and
It's a whole different view of the game. You're like watching ants move around.
yeah, but
down
it's
there.
fun though because you can see
Yeah, no,
kind of
you can see the play
crisp-
even better.
Yeah, you can see the play fully develop. It's like playing NHL. I'm gonna pretend to have an Xbox controller in my hand, watching everything play and see how good I can be on the ice on Friday.
Speaking of NHL, I ran into one of our guys, Blackhawks Cowboy, the other night on the tow machine.
Love that.
Took quite the beating there in that game.
Oof, I bet he's a baller for sure on the sticks. Tony, another CHSN game though on that Friday game. It's also an NHL Network game, so that's important for our out of town viewers who cannot watch this one on ESPN Plus, which is a bummer. It will be on NHL Network though if you have access to that. And then there's two more games as we turn the calendar to February, Tone. February 2nd, Monday night. It's a matchup with the San Jose Sharks. Macklin Celebrini versus Connor Bedard. That's going to be a fun one. That's a 7:30 start as well, also on CHSN. And then Wednesday, February 4th, we mentioned the deadline. I believe it's a 3 o'clock Eastern deadline. So I think it's a 2 o'clock Central deadline for the Freeze. They'll play Columbus at 6 p.m. Because it's in Columbus, also on CHSN. So all five of these games, after a weird, wacky 3-game set where 2 of them were on ESPN Plus or ESPN, all 5 of the upcoming games are on CHSN in the local market. So, and then again, we're into the Olympic break, and they don't play again, I believe, till February 22nd, I believe is the date. And I believe it's the Nashville Predators that will be on the other end of the break for the Blackhawks. So that is what's on tap next, Tone. And again, hopefully we'll get to chat with everybody one more time before the Freeze. Certainly, if the Blackhawks make trades, we'll be back talking after the Olympic Freeze. Probably doing a little bit of a special show as well, previewing the Olympics a little bit. Probably have an Olympic check-in maybe at some point, perhaps before the gold medal game or even before the semifinals. And then, of course, we'll be back in action once the Blackhawks resume. It's a good little break for us as well. There's been a lot of things going on over at OnTap Sportsnet. And as always, I want to encourage everybody, head over to OnTap Sportsnet on YouTube, like, subscribe, hit that bell button. You know, when all of our shows go live, including us here at the Four Feathers Podcast, we'll appreciate it if you subscribe to us as well, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Give us a rating, give us a like. Hopefully you like us enough to give us 5 stars. And if you don't, tell us what we're doing wrong or what we can do better. And we will certainly appreciate the commentary and feedback. And of course, head over to ontapsportsnet.com to get all of your goodies there and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Tone, this was a blast. 1-1-1 over the weekend for the Blackhawks. Definitely would have been sweet if it was a 2-0-1 game, but a really brutal third period to end it. Maybe a little bit of a gassed Blackhawks team ultimately ends their hopes for that against Florida. But lots of hockey coming up. 2 on the road before they're back home on Friday night. You and I will be at the UC on Friday night for that one. And then just 2 more games in the month of February before we hit the Olympic break. Just one Olympic representative as of now. Connor Bedard probably not going to the Olympics, especially after the injury. So it'll be Teuvo Teravainen representing his home country of Finland. Other than that, these Hawks are going to get well rested, and so will we. Tony, always a pleasure, my friend. We'll be back on the mic very, very soon. And what do you say, Tom? Let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks.